Hey, Jack here with TrailRax. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to install the TrailRax roof rack for the Ineos Grenadier. When you receive your package, please inspect it before signing for it, whether there's obvious bends or obvious holes in there that parts could be possibly missing. If that's the case, please reject the package, do not sign for it, send it back to us, we'll get you all taken care of. Otherwise, if it looks all good to you, let's unbox it and let's get ready to install it. Before we get into the install, let's go over the tools that are required. For this installation, we recommend grabbing a ratchet, a 7/16 socket or wrench, a Torx bit T30, a 5/32 Allen socket or an Allen key, and then a 5/64 Allen key. All right, pro tip when installing this roof rack, it'll come with the drop-in points for the extrusions. So keep in mind what side you put all those drop-in spots, whether that's gonna be passenger or driver side on the roof rack. For this example, we're gonna keep it all on one side, on the passenger side. Through our experience, we found that the easiest way to install one of our roof racks is to assemble it on a table. As you can see behind me, we're installing the cross members, and you're gonna wanna start off with the black oxide 3/4 inch bolts, and also include a 1/4 inch internal diameter black oxide washer. Once you get all those cross members lightly screwed in, we'll continue to the next step. In this next step, you're gonna wanna add the carriage bolts into the extrusions. For the clamps, you're gonna want to put 4 carriage bolts, 2 in each slot for the very front cross member of the 3/4 roof rack. And then the second to last cross member, not the very last, but the second to last, you're gonna put another 4 carriage bolts into the extrusion, 2 in each slot. And make sure that is on the underside of the roof rack. All right, go ahead and grab your clamps. There's gonna be 2 different part numbers, GRN-5 and GRN-6. Grab all 4 of those, and then we're gonna add some adhesive padding so that it prevents any scratches or damage to your vehicle. With these pads, you're gonna get 4 of these in here, and for these clamps, you're gonna wanna cut it in half lengthwise, and then once you have done that, make sure it lines up to this thin part rectangular of the clamp. Remove the adhesive and stick it to the clamp. All right, when installing these clamps, you're gonna have 2 part numbers, GRN-5 and GRN-6. There's gonna be 2 per of those part numbers, and I'm gonna tell you where to put them. Referencing the carriage bolts that we put in earlier on the extrusions, once you put the clamps in the correct position, use the stainless steel 1/4 inch internal diameter washers, and also the nylon locking 1/4-20 nylon locking nut. All right, and for these S brackets, you're gonna have 4 of them. Before we install them into the rack, we're gonna go over putting the foam pieces on. This is the thin foam pieces. It should be coming into sizes such as this. And for reference, we're gonna have a slot going vertical here, and also a slot going horizontal here. So if we put it like this on the S, the foam is gonna go onto this elbow right here. Remove the adhesive and it should stick right to the clamp. Cut off any excess and you should be ready to install into the side rails. Now that you have the foam installed onto your S brackets or the mini brackets, you're gonna wanna grab 1 inch 1/4-20 bolts, 2 black oxide washers, and also a 1/4-20 nylon locking nut. And when also installing into the side rail, you're gonna wanna use the vertical line here. The 1 inch bolt will go through that. All right, now that we have all the brackets in place, go ahead and put Loctite onto the 3/4 inch bolts that are screwed into the extrusions. Tighten all those down, and then we're gonna go ahead and use the 7/16 ratchet here to tighten down the nylon locking nuts into the carriage bolts of the large brackets, the GRN-5 and the GRN-6 brackets there. Go ahead and tighten them snug, and then do a half turn back off so that you're allowed to move them within the cross member. This will be needed to install the roof rack on the vehicle because you will need to adjust it accordingly. Do the same thing with the small mini brackets or the S brackets, to where tighten them to snug, get a half turn off, just to give that extra adjustment. Now that you've done that, let's get the rack on the vehicle. Before we get the 3/4 roof rack installed onto the Grenadier, we're gonna have to remove the factory bolts that hold into those grab handles. We're gonna be removing the top 3 of each grab handle using a T30 Torx bit. All right, now with the factory bolts out of the grab handles of your Grenadier, leave that mini washer on there. You're also gonna grab a 1/4 inch internal diameter black oxide washer, and you're gonna add that on top of the mini washer. There's also in the hardware kit white rubber washers that will be included. That will be going on these bolts as well, but once the rack is on, you're gonna put the bolt in, and between the clamp and the vehicle, the white washer is gonna go in between those. Okay, now that you have all the clamps lined up, we're gonna grab our factory bolts again with that black oxide washer. These rubber washers here are a little pain to get in there. Here's a little trick to get those in. So I usually put them on the end of the bolt here. Do not slide them all the way back. And all you wanna do is you're gonna slide it through the oval slot of the clamp and make sure that white washer goes in between the clamp and between the vehicle. So just like that. If you wanna get closer here and see, that white washer is gonna be behind this clamp, but in front of the vehicle, that black washer and the mini washer. Once you have done that to all 12 bolts, then tighten those down, should be good for the 3/4. All right, and now this next step, now that we have the roof rack on, the factory bolts back into where they need to be, we can go ahead and tighten those nylon locking nuts, including the S brackets and the large brackets, the GRN-5 and the GRN-6. Once we have that, we can get the wind deflector going. Now you're gonna wanna grab your logo plates here. If you have the 3/4 roof rack, you're gonna have only 2 of these logo plates. If you have the full length, you're gonna have 3 of these. For this example, we're gonna be doing it on the wind deflector for the full length roof rack. So you're gonna wanna grab 1 of these logo plates, 2 of these 5/32 bolts, and these 2 of the 5/32 hex head nuts, the tiny ones in the kit. And then you wanna grab your 5/64 Allen key for the install of these. When installing the wind deflector, whether it's gonna be for the 3/4 or the full length roof rack, you're gonna wanna grab these 1/4-20 T-nuts here, these 1/2 inch 1/4-20 bolts, and add a washer to them. And for reference, the full length, the logo plate is gonna go on the driver's side of the roof rack. For both the 3/4 and the full length, you will have this weather stripping included. Make sure that this rubber tube side is towards the inside of the vehicle, while this faces the front of the vehicle. So it'll be angled like this, out. When installing the wind deflector, whether it's gonna be the 3/4 or the full length roof rack for the Ineos Grenadier, for the full length, you will be provided a weather stripping, and that will go along the underside of the wind deflector. But installing these 1/2 inch 1/4-20 bolts with the washer on it, and these 1/4-20 T-nuts are gonna go the exact same way for either wind deflector. So let me show you how to do that. For those who just ordered the 3/4 roof rack, you're just going to use the 3/4 inch 1/4-20 black oxide bolts, including a 1/4 inch internal diameter black oxide washer. Use 4 of these for the extrusion that's going to be mounted on the wind deflector. Get that installed on the very front of the 3/4 roof rack, and that is it for the 3/4 roof rack install for the TrailRax Ineos Grenadier. If you have the full length, please continue watching. We're going to cover the rest of the installation going on from now. All right, and for the full length roof rack, you're gonna get this larger wind deflector here, whether you got the 50-inch light bar cutout or the standard deflector. You're gonna grab one of these weather strippings that will be provided in your box. And you're gonna wanna grab the side that has the slot in it, and you're just gonna wrap it all the way down the bottom here It does not have to go all the way to the edge because this edge right here will sit on top of the side rail of the roof rack. So not quite there. Ring it all the way down the roof wind deflector, and then with any excess left on the edges, make sure to cut that off, and then this will be ready to go onto the extrusion. Like we did before with the 3/4 rack, we're gonna flip the side rails upside down, and we're gonna install the extrusions first. This is the easiest way we found for installing our roof racks. So we're gonna get the extrusions installed into the side rails, and then we'll move from there. Also, keep in mind, because of the drop-in points of the extrusions, we were keeping it as the same trend as the 3/4, where we're gonna keep it on the passenger side. All right, and just like the 3/4 roof rack, for the front quarter, installing these extrusions, you're gonna wanna grab your 3/4 inch quarter 20 black oxide bolts, and then also 1/4 inch internal diameter black oxide washer. That will go on like that.
Okay.
All right, and for the full length, and when you're attaching the front quarter, you're gonna wanna utilize these connector plates. It's gonna have GRN-7 part number on there. And then you're gonna wanna grab, per connector plate, a 1-inch bolt, 2 black oxide washers here, and also a nylon locking nut. And you wanna grab 4 of those per connector plate, so 8 in total. And then we'll get a clip of showing how to install these. As you can see, the GRN-7 is gonna go on the inside of the 3/4 rack, and then you're gonna wanna use the 1-inch bolts to connect to these 2 outer holes, and then nylon locking nut on the backside, washers on both sides. All right, now that you have the front quarter assembled, let's get these clamps ready. So you're gonna have 2 different clamps. One's gonna be GRN-9 with a tiny P next to it. That's gonna be passenger side. And the other side is not gonna have a letter next to it. It's just gonna be GRN-9. That'll be your driver side. Now that you figured that out, we're gonna get 2 pieces of foam. There's gonna be a large one here, and also gonna be a thin one. The large one's gonna go on the underside of this clamp here, and then also the thin piece is gonna go on this thin piece on the underside. All right, and when installing the clamps here, now that you have the foam installed, we're gonna wanna get it on the front quarter rack. So grab yourself a 1-inch long quarter 20 bolt with a washer on it, and on the back side, we're gonna add another washer and another nylon locking nut, and there's gonna be 2 per clamp, so 4 in total. Now that we have the clamps installed, let's get the wind deflector going on. As earlier said, the wind deflector will slide onto one of the extrusions. You're gonna use one of these 3/4 inch bolts and also another washer. There could be 4 included on that extrusion, same across all the extrusions. Just this one has the wind deflector on. Install the wind deflector, tighten all the bolts for the extrusions. Let's keep the clamps loose so we have adjustment once we put it on the vehicle. Really good, but it's just really unfortunate his last name. His last name is Nick. Now that you have the front quarter installed, you're going to want to grab those extra 1-inch bolts for that connector plate in the back. Make sure you put a hand towel right here for any kind of cushioning, just to prevent any kind of scratching to the vehicle. All right, now that you have the front quarter on and it's resting, go ahead and tighten down the connector plate first, and then we'll move to the clamps just after. Before we tighten down the larger clamps that are on there, GRN-9, we're gonna grab the GRN-10 and the hardware needed for that, which is gonna be an 1-inch long bolt and 2 washers and a nylon locking nut per hole on the clamp here. Do not tighten it down quite yet. We're just gonna keep it loose and just get those on finger tight, then we'll move on. Now that you have the GRN-10 outer brackets installed finger tight, Now we can tighten the GRN-9 brackets, the larger ones, tighten those top 2 bolts and make sure there is a gap between the bottom side of the front quarter and also the top of your roof on the Grenadier. Now, go ahead and tighten down those GRN-10, the outer clamps there, and make sure you have about a ½ inch between the top of your roof and the bottom side of that front quarter panel there. That's pretty much it for the full roof rack install. Now you just gotta mount your gear, get ready for your next adventure. And for those Grenadiers with the Safari windows, I'm gonna tell you a little tip on how to be able to use and fully utilize the length of those Safari windows, whether you want to pull them out or fully extend them for that fresh air. You're going to want to move this cross member, whichever works for you, whether preference, you're going to move it into this slot here, or you're going to move it into the rear slot behind it, whichever works best for how you mount your gear. Either way, the Safari windows will work in that sense. I'm going to move it back here, and then the Safari windows have full access to be able to remove them or fully extend them. Now that you have your roof rack installed, whether it's going to be the 3/4 or the full length, make sure that every bolt that doesn't have a nylon locking nut has the blue Loctite integrated into the threads that we included into the package. Make sure that after 500 miles that you check all the bolts once again to make sure none of them have moved. Make sure that they're tight and they're all good. I appreciate you watching. I hope this really helped with installing your Grenadier roof rack. If you have any more questions, please reach out to us at info@trailrax.com or give us a call at 385-777-2601. I'm Jack, and this was TrailRax. Thank you.